Shocking statement. Russia's spoofers didn't blind the drone. They taught it where to look. At Bryansk, 4 transmitters fed the Ukrainian lead drone false coordinates, crashing its GPS from confidence to chaos. The autopilot hit a deadlock between GPS INS and compass inputs and flipped to optical cues. Seconds later, it rolled into a 47-degree dive and hit the Polyana D4M1 roof, setting off damage across 7 critical nodes and chemical tanks. In the next minutes, we'll map the spoof ring, dissect the paradox, and show why sensor conflict can sharpen, not shatter, targeting. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. A GPS kill box should force a miss. Over Bryansk, it did something stranger. 4 transmitters ringed the target and built a bubble of certainty that didn't exist, nudging the lead drone's reported position south and east. From the air, roofs lined up in grids, smokestacks marked the industrial blocks, and the false fix told the autopilot it was drifting off course. The trap relied on trust. GPS was crisp, stable, and wrong. The drone's other senses kept quiet at first, logging small mismatches, the kind you ignore when wind gusts shove you. Then the errors stacked. The split came fast. The GPS vector said, "Turn hard right." The inertial system, riding gyros and accelerometers, said, "Hold the track." The magnetometer held a steady heading, unbothered by the fake coordinates. Optical flow reported movement over textures that didn't match the stored map tiles. Roof seams slid past at a rate that argued with the satellite story. The autopilot didn't panic. It counted votes. Every navigation stack runs a fusion step that asks, who do we believe right now? Confidence scores shift second by second. When the GPS residuals blew out, big differences between predicted and seen motion, the weighting flipped. Think of it like 3 people at a crossroads. One point right with great confidence but keeps misreading the street names. One quietly tracks your steps, counting paces and turns. The third reads the signs in front of you. When the names on the poles don't match the confident directions, you follow the one who can read the signs. For the drone, those signs were edges, contrasts, and the geometry of rooftops. Spoofing worked because it was neat. The false data came in smooth, coherent, and perfectly timed. That neatness exposed the lie. Parallax, the way features shift at different distances as you move, didn't line up with the supposed position. Feature matching flagged overlaps that shouldn't exist if the drone were where GPS claimed. The map said a ventilation grid should appear after a longer leg. The camera saw it early. The system measured these disagreements as residuals and consistency checks. When they crossed preset thresholds, the GPS lane lost authority. The pivot felt surgical. Guidance slid to optical cueing and terrain reference. The vision stack sharpened to high contrast lines. Roof ridges, chimney shadows, rail spurs. Edge detection split the scene into hard boundaries. Scale invariant features linked live frames to stored key points. Roof vents, skylight arrays, the odd trapezoid of a loading bay. The algorithm paired those anchors with inertial drift to relock the map. Within seconds, the target signature reappeared. The assembly roof with its offset seam and rectangular panels. The Polyana D4M1 footprint snapped back into the crosshairs without GPS. With the lie muted, the drone stopped trying to reconcile the irreconcilable. Altitude hold loosened to let the nose go down without hunting. Roll increased cleanly and stayed there. The dive settled near 47 degrees, a practical angle for a short terminal leg with high impact energy and minimal exposure to small arms arcs. The camera kept feeding landmarks as range closed, while the inertials carried rate data through the denser end of the dive where vibration climbs. The hit landed on the assembly roof and did more than puncture sheet metal. The warhead punched into the line that tied storage and processing together. 7 nodes went offline. Power conditioning racks, control cabinets, and a cluster of chemical tanks that reacted to heat far more energetically than the explosive itself. Secondary fires raced along cable trays that doubled as conduits for burning fluids. What started as a single strike multiplied as contents vented. Overpressure cracked casings, and suppression systems failed under their own load. If a spoof ring made the final approach sharper, the obvious question is how the drone even reached Bryansk through the thickest radar, jammers, and passive ears Russia could throw in its path. They didn't sneak in by magic. 9 airframes left the border at treetop height, riding the folds of ground and the shadow of low ridges. The route bent around known radar nodes and skimmed river cuts where energy sinks and beams scatter. Spacing mattered. Each drone launched on a clock, separated by tens of seconds, so operators downrange couldn't line up a single engagement window. At 50 meters, power lines and windbreaks became cover. The flight traded altitude for invisibility and used the Earth as a shield. The first squeeze came early. An Su-35 pilot found a faint prop signature, a wobble in the return that didn't match a jet. Range didn't help him. The drones were 50 times smaller than what that radar excels at. When he fired, the low-alt pair chopped throttle and let the ground reflection split the seeker's brain. 2 targets appeared, one real, one mirrored off the surface. The missile chose the brighter ghost and plowed soil. That bought distance and time, and the formation slid west, then north, keeping hills between them and the long-range sets. Bryansk Oblast turned brutal. 8 of the 9 survivors watched their satellite count plunge from 12 to 0 in a blink. 4 jammers sat in a diamond, pushing clean, hard interference that drowned spaceborne whispers. MOSFA-1 didn't need to talk. It listened. With 3 ears, it read tiny time differences and could cough up a firing fix in under 8 seconds. Radio silence kept the formation dull and hard to place. Instead of answering the air, they wrote their own math. Silence didn't save them from sound. The 1B-75 penicillin array waited for harmonics. Chinese props at 7,400 RPM produce a steady beat across microphones set in a precise pattern. In calm air, that fingerprint stands out at 12 kilometers. You can't switch engines mid-flight, but you can smear the rhythm. The drones cycled throttle by small amounts, breaking the perfect cadence penicillin expects. Up and down 5 meters here, 10 there, they nudged the Doppler and cut the clean lines the microphones like to draw. Dead reckoning carried them through the blackout. The INS counted motion, but drift grows mile by mile. To cage the error, they paired it with terrain cues. Small rises, a bend of a railway, the shape of a lake edge. Optical nav could lock to these and shave meters off the drift. Emissions stayed tight. No chatter, no pings. One exception was deliberate. Drone 3 climbed to 500 meters and lit up. It transmitted continuously and made itself the problem. Missiles went for the bright, loud target. While they chased, the rest slid back under the horizon, tucked behind barns and tree lines. The defense stacked layers, proximity fuses through tungsten cubes, turning volume into danger. Passive sensors cued shooters without revealing themselves, cutting reaction time. Windows shrank. Over Penza, the flight kept Eland cold and ran optical guidance hot. A battery loosed a salvo at the moving smear, but the drones dropped behind roofs and branches and broke the geometry the seekers needed. Splinters chased echoes instead of hulls. INS figures kept ticking. Cameras kept matching edges. The line held. They made Bryansk still flying in step. Navigation didn't survive by brute force. It survived by mixing tools. Inertials to bridge blackouts, terrain and optical reference to trim drift, and emissions control to starve passive ears. The formation stayed whole long enough to hit the spoof ring at the edge of the city, where the real knife fight would start. They arrived bruised but functional. Inside the perimeter, the fence talked, and the last problem waited. Sensor conflict isn't a bug, it's a lever. Force a choice and a smart drone will ignore polished lies and chase the imperfect truths it can verify. Edges, shadows, and motion that match the ground. That's how guidance survives spoof rings and jamming walls when the vote shifts to sight and inertia. If you want deeper breakdowns on guidance wars, spoofing logic, optical navigation tricks, or how acoustic countermeasures really cue shooters, don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell us which system to dissect next. Next time, we'll test a harder claim. Can software scramble an engine's acoustic fingerprint without touching the hardware?